Hello, and welcome to the DC Rock History Podcast. My name is Philip, and today we're talking about Government Issue and their EP, Legless Bull. This was Dischord Records release number 4, so things are really starting to pick up. And joining me today, I have an amazing guest, Paul Vodra of Hometown Sounds. He has been a newsletter writer, a blogger, a podcaster, a Instagrammer, all things supporting the DC music scene for over a decade now. Hometown Sounds has done and still does great work to bolster the scene. In fact, when people reach out to me about press, I tell them I don't do that, and you should go talk to Paul at Hometown Sounds because he has got you covered. So he is all things DC Rock current, DC Rock modern day, and he joined us here on DC Rock History to get into the weeds on the early 80s in DC, the hardcore scene, and of course the great band Government Issue. So without further ado, let's get into our hardcore history segment.
Flex your head. It's time for some hardcore history.
By the summer of 1981, Washington, D.C.'s punk scene had hardened into something faster, louder, and more defiant, what was being called hardcore. Following in the wake of bands like Teen Idols and Bad Brains, a new wave of teenage punks began organizing around Dischord Records, booking their own shows and recording on shoestring budgets. Government Issue, or GI as they were often called, emerged from this crucible of youthful energy and DIY urgency. Led by John Stabb, a former drummer turned unpredictable frontman, GI played their first chaotic set at the Unheard Music Festival, sharing the stage with Minor Threat and SOA. That night they made more noise than music, but that rawness was exactly the point. Recorded just a few months later, GI's debut Legless Bull captured the messy, manic brilliance of DC's early hardcore scene. Released as Dischord's 4th record, it crammed 10 tracks into just under 9 minutes. Guitarist John Barry summed up the band's approach best. "I just take old Rolling Stones chords and speed them up." The result was fast and furious. Songs like Religious Ripoff, Bored to Death, and No Rights became instant anthems for disaffected teens. GI brought something special to the table: personality and perseverance. Stabb's spastic stage presence, outsider charm, and refusal to conform made him one of the most compelling figures in hardcore. While other bands flamed out or broke up, Government Issue kept evolving, eventually incorporating melody, metal, and more complex songwriting into their later work. But it all started here with Legless Bull, an EP that distilled the chaos, urgency, and attitude of early 80s DC hardcore into one relentless blur of sound. Hello, and welcome to the DC Rock History Podcast. My name is Philip, and I am once again flying the plane solo today. Sans host. I'm learning to fly this plane. It must be a small plane, one of those Indiana Jones type planes. Alex is not with us, unfortunately, but of course he is with us in spirit. And with all of you out there, anytime you're talking about rock and roll, just know that Alex is with you. But today I am more than equipped. Our guest is a seasoned podcast veteran himself, as well as a Substack blogger. Do we say Substacker?
Substacker, I think.
Substacker and many other things. Paul Vodra of Hometown Sounds, welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling today?
Thank you so much. I am feeling great. It has been a long time since I've been on a podcast, so I'm happy to dust off these muscles and see how they work.
Very nice. Well, we're talking about Government Issue, in case this just auto-played for you, and we'll get to them in a minute. But, as much as this is a band or a show about bands, and we use, one great album per episode, this is also a podcast about DC rock venues, DC rock zines, and DC rock substacks. And to my money, you have run the finest DC music newsletter for the last 10 years. And it's also sort of the last of its kind, in my opinion.
Interesting.
it's evolved, but I was wondering if maybe you could take me through the beginning of Hometown Sounds, the middle of Hometown Sounds, and then the part we've all been waiting for. Oh wait, not like that, but I mean is the end. The up to date.
Yes, it has taken a lot of turns as different phases have come upon us with music. It has evolved to align with them, perhaps. So it started first as a DJ night back in like 2008. A friend of mine was booking a DJ night at the Argonaut, which was on 8th Street Northeast, and asked me if I wanted to do that. And I was like, absolutely. I had been to Fort Reno, and I missed the glory days of Fort Reno. I don't know where I was. I have been in the area for a long, long time. I was born here and raised in the burbs, and I was aware of the cool stuff happening in the city, but I couldn't go down into the city. It was too dangerous. But at some point, I heard about this Fort Reno thing. I went, and I was blown away, and I realized, like, oh, this is about DC bands. This is about, and they're booking all kind of stuff, but it's all about DC bands. And I thought, well, what would a DJ night sound like if instead of you were playing like all house music or all disco or all hip hop, what if you played all DC music? And so I did that for a little more than a year, and then the Argonaut had a fire, and then that was the end of that. And then I launched an internet radio station because I wanted to stream all the DC music, and I was really into that at the time. So I launched that, and then I realized that I could just come on to the live stream, pick out my own songs, talk a little bit, and if I recorded that, that could be a podcast. So then I started a podcast out of that, and then my co-producer Tony came on board when he was a fan, but knew that it could use some help. It could use some production quality, and which he brought in spades. And so I had that going for a while. I had the website where I was putting up music videos because I was born and raised on music videos, and I thought that people weren't getting exposed to them enough. And there were some really, really awesome ones in DC. So I wanted to, and I thought I needed something to write about every day, or else people would forget about me. So I did that. And eventually, we had the pandemic, we had the podcast come to an end. Tony moved on to other things, and I realized that my strengths do not lie in podcast production. I would need some help with that. So I pivoted to the Substack. I realized that now what people were into were email newsletters because social media was broken, hard to get through to people, and that people wanted their stuff in their inbox. So I started a Substack and just, figuring it out as I went along, trying to do my show recommendations, trying to round up what's in the news, talk about more music videos, talk about albums, maybe interview some people, whatever I feel like. And it's been really good. I've gotten a really great response to it. Comes out Monday mornings. It's free to subscribe. Some people have tried to pay me money, and I said, no, I don't need it. I'm good. If you want to support me, you buy the music. You buy the stuff I'm linking you to, because that's where I want the goodwill to go, is to the musicians.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, if that's not a sales pitch enough. I mean, and this is not me buttering your bread. It is legit the first thing I read on a Monday morning. I really look forward to it. Things are so different from the way they used to be. I mean, old man shouts at the clouds, right? But
Yep.
when I and these were all great spots. I'm kind of blanking on them. Well, Brightest Young Things,
Yes.
DC Music Download,
Yep.
Chunky Glasses used
Yes.
to cover Chunky Glasses, who still exists, and Eduardo's been on this pod.
Mhm.
They still cover some DC stuff in their podcast, but they used to be like a hybrid Instagram blog that would cover things. All Things Go has
Yep.
become a music festival. Anyways, all I'm saying is 10 years ago,
Mhm.
there were a lot of places you could submit music and locally. And I mean, Hometown Sounds is still doing that great work, and I really appreciate it, and I genuinely enjoy it. And so thank you for doing that. And yeah, if there's anyone out there who hasn't checked it out, get on it. This is
There's
a
no reason
podcast.
not
You can
to.
multitask. Yeah. Just go to Substack, boom, follow it.
Yeah.
But as is tradition, we kick things off with an icebreaker here on the show.
Very nervous
Today,
about this.
I think it's a softball, but I actually, now that I realized, I thought of it a few days ago, and I don't have an answer, but that only just occurred to me like a minute ago. So I hope you have a good answer. What is, because we're talking about an EP. This is one of our first EPs that we've talked about, a little, behind the music, but behind the podcast. This is the first EP that I've recorded talking about. I should say that the Minor Disturbance EP will technically have come out already, that episode. However, this is the first EP that I'm talking about myself. And Paul, aside from this one, aside from Government Issues Classic Legless Bull, what is your favorite EP?
I think my favorite EP is by a really, really great band called The Coward's Choir. I don't know if you're
Okay.
familiar with them. They put out an EP called Cool Currency that just was fantastic. Kind of a super group with Andy Ziff on the vocals, Ryan Walker on keys and bass, Ben Tufts on drums, and Adam Neubauer also on drums. So they had two drummers, and you've already got me right there because I love the drums. I used to play the drums, and when you have two of them together that are immensely talented, you're like, oh my God. I loved it. They put out a music video that they recorded while they recorded the song Is This a Wrecking Ball in the music studio. So they filmed it and then they put it to a music video and they asked me to premiere it. And I was so honored and I love it. And it was great that I turned out to be friends with all of them. And they were just immensely talented. Everybody thought that was the band that was going to blow up in this era of like maybe 2014 or so. And they were, how do bands blow up? I really don't know. It seems like a dark art, and to be in the right place at the right time, you need
Sure.
all the stars to align. And it's such a bummer that the stars did not align in that case, because man, that I still put that on, still love it, blew me away. If you haven't heard that, please go check it out.
Well, I haven't heard it. Double points for making it a local band. That's very cool. My embarrassment knows no ends. I'm trying to think of my favorite EP off the top of my head, but I'm not going to sit here and scroll. What do you think makes something a good EP versus, I mean, obviously the expectations going in are different. Are you less likely to listen to an EP than an album if you're just looking for something to put on?
Like a lot of times an EP can be the thing, like the beta test in a way, like the trial run of like, these are our first songs and we don't
Right.
quite have enough of them yet to make a whole album, but then we're going to put it out and then we're going to do the album next. So it can be like the intro statement. Sometimes an album is a little padded. Sometimes you're a little like, we really only needed the first 5 songs of this album. And you could have just chopped this up and made an EP. So I love how focused an EP is. 4, 5, 6, maybe even 10 songs crammed into a small dose. And I think it's good that, nowadays everything is being chopped up and playlisted. And it almost seems like, is the album dead? Do we even have patience or the attention span to listen to a whole album? And if you've got the EP, then you can hear, if you just have one song, it might be an absolute banger, but you don't know what else they got in the tank. You don't know where else that band goes. But if you have an EP, you should be able to figure that out.
I agree with that. Some of the baggage of what format is this in, how do the DSPs present this to people has sort of fallen away. It's like, yeah, people will find it if they're going to find it. And the EP has really come back into style, I feel like, in the last few years. And And I like that. And I think, you know, the cool answer for me to say would be the Minor Disturbance EP from Teen Idols. But if I'm being honest, the EP that I think I've spent the most time with is the Nationals Cherry Tree EP,
Yeah,
which is and people are always talking about the National and Teen Idols in the same breath. So let me just
of
join in
course.
that chorus. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I definitely need to check out the Cowards Choir.
Mm.
And I have a question for you. I have always kind of wondered about this with people who work with publications and promote people. You're not Pitchfork, so you're not like assigning a score or choosing what's going to get best new music or get placement at all on your site. Well, I'm sure you do choose what gets placement on your site, but what's the fatigue like of listening to new music? Or what's the like? How do you keep your ears fresh? How do you keep yourself fresh? Versus like, you know, I definitely have been in a phase where it's like, oh, music's played out, dog.
Yeah. I think listening to a lot of different kinds of music, I think, is
Mm,
important for that. There's so many different kinds of music. So I consider myself pretty solidly Gen X. I was in college in the 90s. And in the 90s, a lot of people took on a personality or an identity based on the music that they were into. You know, I'm a ska
mhm.
person, I'm a punk person, I'm a hip hop person. And that never fit with me. In college, I had a radio show and I played Celtic music because that was one of the
That's
things I
awesome.
was into. And but I was also into electronic music and just, you know, I've always been into a lot of different kinds of stuff. And so when I was thinking about being a DJ, I thought, well, I can't just play one genre. That would bore the pants off me. So when I had this idea of like, well, what if it was just a location and it was everything in that location? Then that just made so much sense to me, and I love being able to put different things together and show like, oh, this song has a little bit of a reggae vibe, and that can segue into this reggae song,
Mm,
and that can segue into this electronic song. You know, you can really make connections there. So I think having the different things, if you just go down like the indie rock hole, and
yeah.
just, you know, all I listen to is indie rock,
Yep.
then yeah, and it can get really tiring, and then it could be like, well, this doesn't quite sound like this major label
Yeah.
overproduced kind of
Right.
thing, you know. But it's his own fresh original thing that is made in DC that probably wasn't made to be hitting the major playlists on Spotify, but it's because that's what they wanted to make.
Mhm. Yeah, and the more local music, locally produced music, it goes a few different ways. It could be music from a local scene. It could be music from the 60s, especially if it's not been remastered. If you can kind of dig into some old Motown that isn't like the top chart stuff that like sounds really modern, and you can sort of listen to it all back to back. Or if you ever get into like, you know, like subgenres, like Nigerian funk is like so great, and I'll often like listen to that. It's like when you spend an hour in that world, a week in that world, it stops sounding flat like it might to someone who's really used to Sabrina Carpenter, and that's no shade against Sabrina Carpenter. It's just that if you are on that steady diet of pop music, there's sort of a palette that, you know, you're like, you have to kind of stay on that diet. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. So no, I totally get that. I've had a few times too on my end. What you were saying made me think of this. A few times we've had episodes of this pod canceled or rescheduled, I should say, pushed down a week or 2 weeks, even a month. What happens on this show often is for the 2 weeks leading up to an episode, I'm kind of cramming like a test for the episode, listening to a lot of the band. And when it's been rescheduled, I've sort of not revisited it until the day of, just because I'd already kind of been in that headspace. And then there's something so beautiful about it's almost like you spent that concentrated time with an album, you walked away, and then you come back, you're like, oh wow, this sounds like it sounds like an old nostalgic thing to me almost. You know what I mean? Even just like a
Yeah,
couple weeks can do something so sweet in that
interesting.
way, which is nice. Yeah, but I'm always curious because you do such a great job with the write-ups that you put out and supporting people. And I mean, it seems to me like you listen to everything and you really believe in it. And I know that can be a grind. So yeah, shout out to you for staying on that. And
Thank you.
maybe there'll be a Hometown Sounds Celtic edition next. And,
I would be game for it.
It was just St. Patrick's Day.
It was. I missed it.
Well, what is your relationship to DC hardcore generally? And if it's none, that's fine because I have a sub question for you too.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely not something that I listened to growing up. And so coming to it a little bit later, it definitely felt like it cast a big shadow over DC music. Even Dischord itself, because it got, I'm sure we'll get into it, it started with the punk music in the 80s. And then, in the 90s, things got weird. And in the 2000s, we got into some different kind of stuff. And I thought that was interesting, but it seemed as though a lot of people, really wanted to focus on the hardcore punk. And it's fun to see some of the reunion stuff happening now. But it's not something that I have like a deep nostalgia for. And it's interesting because I feel like I can maybe listen to it a little bit more critically, and not, because there's some things that I just can't, it meant so much to me when I was in the right age that I just can't be independent about it. So it is a genre among many that has stuff that I like and some stuff that I'm like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, it does loom large, and
I definitely have, over the years encountered some bands that I feel like were carrying the torch along. The one that comes to mind most right now is Priests. That I saw Priests in a basement, in like a house basement, because I got wind that like this hot new band was gonna be playing, and it was an early show of theirs, and so and it was sweaty and claustrophobic, but it was fun, and it was really neat because you could be like, oh, this band is this. There's something sizzling with this band. So that was pretty great, and seeing some shows in specific places, St. Stephen's, Union Arts when that was a thing, the various house venues of the 2010s, which are all gone now, and maybe some new ones are coming along. But yeah,
Bathtub Republic, Babe City,
exact Paper House,
yeah, a Bandanda House.
That was a marketing genius on their part.
Good,
and it was accidental, but it was absolute genius.
Yep. It's fun to go through these old records differently than I grew up on this stuff and didn't care at all about the lyrics. I just knew that it sounded good for skateboarding, and that was the main draw for me. And Twitter, now Blue Sky, maybe Instagram, but I think really Twitter like kind of replaced the outlet that a lot of the 80s hardcore put into its lyrics. It was like it all got jammed into the music, the emotion, the lyrics, the causes, and oftentimes that happened in an interband. The songs were often about the scene itself. And yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing that maybe in the modern context, I think I'm simply too old to really be involved in a lot of it. I'm sure there's a ton of scene politics, but I feel like the way that plays out is differently now, not in songs. It's almost like mixtape era rap, is often what I think about, of like, or I guess, what am I saying? Like 2024 was full of like rap songs that were in conversation with one another, like back and forth. And I don't think rock does that as much anymore. Guitar-driven music does that as much anymore. It's a fun jumping off point for this band because Government Issue is the fourth release on Dischord Records. So Teen Idols is number one, SOA, No Policy, Minor Threat, first 7-inch, and then Government Issue. So this is like right as Dischord is starting to capture its identity in terms of like, oh, fourth release. Maybe we have some sort of idea of what this is going to sound like. And, I guess this is the part that I'm really, really fascinated by with this season of the podcast is just like how Ian and Jeff figured out how to become a record label and how to advertise in zines and like Maximum Rock and Roll and find radio stations that would play them and then funnel that back to a house where they were all just kind of not just kind of like where they were all working to fulfill orders and be really serious about it. And that would have had to been cash and check. I mean, again, like this is all like dumb guy shit, but like we just think about like, oh wow, this was not, it's not the easiest thing to do. Release number 4 means the wheels are kind of turning. There's got to be some money coming back in if this is still happening. And I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. John Schroeder, who would go by John Stabb, founded Government Issue and was the only member who stayed in the band, who was in the band for its entire duration. Brian Gay started on the bass, though there was a bass switch pretty early. John Barry was on guitar, and Mark Alberstadt was on the drums. Mark was the second longest tenure in the band, I believe. Tom Lyle eventually came and played guitar for a long time as well, but in terms of founding members, Mark was in there for a really long time. And their first show, their live debut, was at the Unheard Music Festival. And as Dance of Days, the great book by Marks, Jenkins, and Anderson, recounts, there was no practice before this show. So the drummer was playing the wrong thing, and they just kind of kept going. And it sounds like it was a bit of a disaster, but also kind of gloriously so. And, and as such, Government Issue was born. They were encouraged by teen idols and Bad Brains who were already, cooking up steam. For this episode today, this band had a long history, but, we're just focusing on the early days, the scene, and the run up to and creation of Legless Bull, their first EP. The hardcore scene in 1981 is kind of in its first full swing, though by all accounts it's pretty tumultuous. They are sort of running around Georgetown, getting in fights with lots of people. The whole scene sort of seems to travel together to shows. From what I've read in Dance of Days, it's not clear if a famous incident, a famous fight happened in Philly. It's not clear to me if Government Issue was actually playing or if they just went up to watch SOA. But they did go up and get in some fights, and that resulted in one of the tracks that we're going to listen to today, No Rights. But Ian MacKaye produced Legless Bull. He mixed it, the EP. It was recorded at Inner Ear by Don Zantara, friend of the pod. Paul, what did you think of? I know this wasn't an album you'd spent a ton of time with, but how does it sit with you once you dug into it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I listened to all of the 7 inches. There's that 1981 Year in 7 Inches, collection. And so you listen to them, and it goes quickly, right? It's like, okay, here's the first Teen Idols, here's the first SOA, here's the first Government Issue, here's Minor Threat, here's so it goes quick, and you realize like, oh, this one is kind of a little more screamy, and then the Minor Threat one comes on, you're like, oh, this one has a little bit more going on to it, like there's you can understand the lyrics more. I am not a lyrics guy, and I don't know if that's good or bad with this, because sometimes I'm like, what are they saying? Does it matter? Did they write lyrics? And so I did go consult, genius.com to figure out what some of
Yeah.
these lyrics were, which was interesting. So yeah, even with like, how long is this? I think it's like 9 minutes long. It's
Yeah, I think
quick.
9 minute, 10 songs in 9 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. 10 songs, 1 7-inch.
Yeah.
So it varies. Some of them were pretty fun, and obviously, like, you can tell the energy, the
Yeah.
pent up youthful energy that is just getting channeled into this is really remarkable, and
Mhm.
that everybody was really young, obviously, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
Ian was about 19
Yeah.
years old when he did this. I'm glad that the things I was doing at 19 aren't around to be discussed on a podcast. But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it is funny sometimes, like, I it's nice doing this in podcast format because at once I wanna take all this stuff very seriously because this music means a lot to people and is great, and on the other hand, it's nice to be, like, not writing it when if I were to write it all out, it's like, I don't wanna hold anyone to too much here, you know what I
right.
mean? These are kids and, like, yeah, we could let's give it a little context, let's be, like, a little loose with it because it's like, yeah, everything with a grain of salt, like, they were rowdy and they were getting in fights, but, that didn't last forever. They weren't, like, terrorizing people, and it did become, it morphed into something else very quickly, but yeah, it's fascinating. They were playing shows at the Wilson Center, Madams Organ, and already, by 1982, there's things about the scene that are starting to sort of crest, and then it's gonna come to kind of a screeching halt, and then there's, Revolution Summer is coming and all that. So, it's funny, like, you're saying, like, Ian's, like, 21 or what or 19, I can't remember, but he's really young when he's recording this, and they're already saying things like, "I wish it was 70," or "When's it gonna be 77 again, 1977 again?" So it's like, they're
Yeah,
also, like, already nostalgic for an earlier time themselves, which is very very charming.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the interesting thing is that what what I feel like Discord has always wanted to do is like document the scene,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
the fact that there was a scene, the fact that all these bands were friends and went to see each other's shows, and of course traded members.
Yep.
Um, there is a uh, graph in the Wikipedia page for this band to
Oh, yeah.
chart the membership over the course of the time, and like the colors correspond to the instruments that people played. So it's well done, and so it's remarkable that there was that scene and that it was so well developed and that it had so many awesome talents and personalities in it that it's worth remembering.
Yeah. It's, I mean, when you get one of those colorful graphs on a band's Wikipedia page, it's gonna be good, and this one is particularly particularly fun, a lot of stops and starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, to that, but we can get into some album credits. It's the same lineup as, um, the founding membership: John Stabb on vocals, Brian Gay on bass, Mark Aberstadt on drums, John Barry, and then I guess he was nicknamed God or the God on guitar, which I thought was great. Ian MacKaye is the producer, Don Zantar is the engineer, and, the one notable thing for this, is that Brian Baker, w as Brian Gay was exiting the band, Brian Baker of Minor Threat, joined for a minute and, played bass with them. And so, like, during this run in 1981, like you're saying, they're kind of swapping members, and, Minor Threat, I think, they were on hiatus and then they were gonna get back together. And so, yeah, it's just, stuff people do when they're in bands. And,
Yep.
yeah, it's cool, and it's very hard to track if you're trying to put together, let's say, a DC rock history podcast that makes sense of all this. A lot of Brians, a lot of Jeffs, a lot of,
Mm.
a lot of names that I'm trying to keep straight.
Ha.
But, what do you say? Why don't we get into a little bit of the music?
Let's do it.
I love it. Maybe we'll listen to 2 back to back. How do you feel about listening to the first 2 tracks?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, I had it pulled up, and then I was looking for EPs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was all queued up and ready to go, but my quest took me elsewhere. All right, here we go. This is Religious Ripoff. Okay, wait. I lied because I want to talk about that one a little bit. I just while we were listening, big shout. I was remembering what it reminded me of was this podcast actually started as the DC Music History Podcast many years ago. Not many, but like 2018. And one of the big, like first big moments in DC music history in terms of like modern music was Billy Graham preached at RFK Stadium, and there was a big choir that sang with him. And it was like it was a really big deal in terms of production. It happened in 1960. And in terms of like a musical production, it was, I think, pretty groundbreaking for the city. It was kind of the first of its kind. Then the Beatles would come along a few years later at the Washington Coliseum, and like that was there was a lot of like stadium stuff that happened in DC, but the DC was known for its choral music, its choir music, and Billy Graham was one of the first things that kept coming up when I was researching things and that's not the direction that this show went. But anyways, I mean, Billy Graham is obviously like famous in his own right, but it is interesting. I wonder how much of that trickled down to the people around them, their families, and I wonder how much of that was still in the air and inspired them to write that song.
Interesting. And shows, punk rock shows happened at St. Stephen's, which is a church, still a church. I think Ian MacKaye's father is involved in that church. So
yeah,
it's not like they hated all religion, I believe, but I think that they were calling out some of the shadiness with some of the evangelism stuff, which I can totally get behind.
Yeah, totally. It's calling out hypocrisy is definitely a hallmark of early hardcore. Listening to it, it's funny. There's this little shift that happens from Teen Idols to Minor Threat, and I can pick up on Government Issue being in that Minor Threat vein more than the Teen Idols. Like Teen Idols to me, like live a little bit more in the like British punk, like The Damned or Stiff Little Fingers, and then later on like the Replacements and stuff. This is very subtle, but there's just this little tweak that kind of happens with the singing, especially between Teen Idols and Minor Threat. And like we were saying, like this is Dischord's 4th release. This is like really the establishment of a sound, and it just fits in nicely. Yeah, it's cool. And then next up is my favorite song on this release. Next up that we'll listen to, I should say, Rock and Roll Bullshit. And it's great. It's just perfect. It falls in that like funny subgenre or that funny thing that happens in music sometimes, especially in rock, where someone is trying to jokingly imitate something,
Mm-hmm.
like Song 2 by Blur,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually just becomes a successful version of what it is.
Yeah, if you do
So,
it well enough.
exactly. So, anyways, with all that preamble, here's rock and roll bullshit.
Wow, man, kick-ass rock and roll. Wow, man, kick-ass rock and roll. I need a bong, man. I need some drugs. Wow, this rock and roll bullshit is good. Oh, man, I'm getting fucked up. Wow, man, wow. Wow, pass the bong. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I should also say, it's not just a great rock song that they're kind of like imitating or they're kind of mocking, but it's also like the perfect song to do while you're doing or to listen to while you're doing drugs.
Which is probably not what they intended, but that's all right.
Exactly. That's really the part that's so funny is like,
Yeah.
It works perfectly. But what about you? How are these tracks sitting with you?
I mean, I love the punk energy. I love the offbeats. And the scream vocals where, if they're not perfect, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, this stuff is really fun. I imagine that it is good on the 7-inch, good on the streaming, but best in person.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they were definitely known as a pretty wild band, especially John Stabb. Consistently wild is pretty much what every every report says.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's well put. Did you have any that you wanted to get to? Any from the album that you wanted to listen to?
Let's see. How about Bored to Death?
Love it. That was on my list too.
Nice.
Here we go. Bored to Death.
I got a job, life's a drag. Just don't wait for me and I'm back. I went to school, not a cheat. I got where I wanna take. I got a job, life's a drag. Just don't wait for me and I'm back. Went to school, not a cheat. I got where I wanna take. Nothing to do, bored to death. I'm so bored, I'm bored to death. Nothing to do, I'm bored to death. I'm so bored, I'm bored to death. What's the thing? Just wanna die. Just to move the light right. Don't do drugs. I will start. Dead of one got blood apart. What's the thing? Just wanna die. Just to move the light right. Don't do drugs. I will start. Dead of one got blood apart. Nothing to do. I'm bored to death. I'm so bored. I'm bored to death. Nothing to do. Bored to death. I'm so bored. I'm bored to death. We ain't got no right.
All right. Nice back to back. And like we talked about, that song was written after Joe Stabb was in a fight or witnessed a fight regardless, the key element was that the cops were just standing there watching everybody get into a brawl,
Yeah.
not doing much.
Yeah. Not cool. It is now a good time to talk about straight edge.
Now's a great time to talk about straight edge. Wow. You are a podcast host. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So straight edge comes from Ian MacKaye.
Mhm.
And you probably know more about punk rock history than I do, but I believe that the idea of putting the X's on the hands came from Ian, that they wanted to go to shows
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't want to drink. And the people running the door were like, we can't let you in because we don't want you to drink. And he'd say, we don't want to drink anyway. Just mark our hands with X's and you'll know not to serve us. And that was just a practical solution to a problem that they wanted to go see this music. And then it caught on. And now we're still doing it today.
When you read the interviews about it, they're like, if you see anyone drinking with an X, throw them out. They're very willing to, I don't want to say like zero tolerance. Well, it is kind of zero tolerance policy, but they're happy to keep each other accountable. There was like a level of like, we're not here to subvert that, we're not here to break the law, not here to get the club in trouble. And that stuff literally did change the way venues operate and the way that like clubs run. And it was really important to them. It makes sense. And so it makes sense why it was important to them and like bled into their music and all that stuff. Because it's pretty cool that, the way that, I don't know how this shift happens, but in the 60s, there are all these teen clubs, and that goes into the 70s. And you can read about it in Springsteen's Born to Run book. You can listen to conversations about it on season 1 of this podcast. But there were sort of protected spaces for kids to go. And, I don't know what it's probably just not financially viable. But that sort of dissolves. Sometime in the 70s, the drinking laws also change at a certain point, though not yet, where you can't drink beer and wine until you're 21. Anyways, it is an interesting. It's a huge loss. It's also a huge loss for musicians because it was basically this development league, a D league for early rockers, to young rock and rollers to cut their teeth and get their chops up. Anyways, yeah. So this is a very new problem to them, which is also an interesting way to think about it. It's not just like, oh, this has been a problem forever. It's like, no, in the last 10 years, there's been this outlet that's sort of dissolved, and they're trying to find some resolution to it. So yeah.
And I
Very
believe that
interesting.
they didn't really mean to turn straight edge into a movement. I think they just sort of took it for themselves, but then, a good idea like that is bound to spread. And I think it's obviously a counterpoint to the drunk and, messed up punks that were, especially in the UK. That DC had a different vibe that took it seriously in a way, and they didn't want to be messed up performing and living life. They wanted to really experience the whole thing, and that was the way that they thought to do it best, and I think it's pretty great.
Yeah, me too. There's a fun story. It'll probably come up on every episode of this season, but HR and Bad Brains went on tour with The Damned and some other bands, and like really toured around. And Minor Threat had also toured, but they had written the song Straight Edge, and they weren't aware of how much of an impact it was having around the country. And HR from Bad Brains comes back and tells Ian, like, you really started something like this. This is out there. So like to what you're saying, like I don't think it's something that they even, how could you possibly think that you're going to start something like that, like a phenomenon like that or cultural wave. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. And government issue are right there in the the early days of all this. As we move towards the end, Paul, I hope you'll bear with me. I want to read a little bit because John Stabb passed away. I wanted to find the year.
I believe it is 2016.
John Stabb passed away in 2016, and Jay Robbins of Jawbox and Government Issue, and briefly Government Issue and Burning Airlines, wrote something really nice, and I hope you don't mind if I read it a little bit before we get into our plugs. But this is from Jay Robbins. In my tenure as Government Issue's 9th bassist, I saw John Stabb emerge unscathed from not one, but two, actually, let's say 2.5 riots on tour, a van accident that cut short Government Issue's UK tour and left us stranded for a week, a weird generator party in the desert outside Las Vegas, innumerable brutal slam pits overflowing with bald, white t-shirt clad teenage machismo, into which he would wade fearless and or clueless, clad in the most flamboyant thrift store chic, armed with only a tambourine and a microphone. So I suppose I thought there was a way he could emerge unscathed from this battle with cancer too. I saw him turn love, heartbreak, disillusion into song lyrics for fuel for catharsis, because that is what a good singer does. He was never ever cool, but he was quintessentially punk, a singular weirdo, always true to himself. He was simply unstoppable, which I'm finding is an example we cherish more as we get older. He literally changed my life. And I thought that was beautiful and couldn't find anywhere to stop reading. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to copy the whole thing and I'm going to put it in the outline and read the whole thing. And because that's quite an impact.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that, something you started when you were in your early 20s, maybe, and that evolved. The Government Issue had this, hardcore punk sound, but they took it in different ways over the course of the 80s. And then John Stabb was in some other bands for a while, got Government Issue back together for some reunion shows, and then was taken from us at the age of 54, which is that's not right. He should have had
crazy.
At least another 50 years. So not cool.
Not cool. But we thank you, John, for the music and for being so early to something that was going to have such a big impact on so many people. It's pretty good stuff. But shifting gears just a bit, Paul, other than Hometown Sounds, is there anything that you'd like to plug, you'd like for the folks to know about?
The other musical love that I have is DJing mashups.
Love.
Which is just when things are dark, I've had a hard day, the mashups really can wash it all away. I love them so much, and I get to DJ them not very often. So I wish I could tell the listeners when I'm going to be doing that next so that they can come check it out. But I don't know yet, and I certainly don't know in the future. So I did make an Instagram account for it that is DJ Paul Vodra, and that's because somebody said, hey, I like what you're doing. Where can I find out more? And I was like, oh, I should probably figure that out. So it did what everybody does. I make an Instagram because everybody, what's your Instagram? That's where everybody wants to follow you. So I made one. So that is a thing you can do to follow and see what I'm doing on that front. I would love to be able to do more of that. Because I think it brings joy to everybody, or rage when they get really angry when there's a particular song that they think should not be messed with, but I have done it anyway. So that's what I do.
Well, maybe you can find a way to get Government Issue some rock and roll bullshit in your next set. I would love to make it up to one of those. That sounds awesome. We will, as a friend of the pod, we'll make sure to share that on our Instagram and of course in the show notes. Some folks, a few folks have asked me if I cover modern stuff, and I always say no, because that is covered so well by Hometown Sounds.
Oh, well, thank you.
So I will continue to say that. And thanks for your newsletter. Thanks for coming on. I thought we could go out with asshole. What do you think?
It's perfectly good sentiment.
I love it. All right. Without further ado, government issue, asshole.
Thank you, Phil.